The first tree fell at 6:17 a.m. with a sound like a gunshot echoing across the lake. I nearly dropped my coffee mug as the 200-year-old sentinel oak, the same tree my great-grandfather carved his initials into when this was still Callahan farmland, shuddered under the bulldozer's assault. Its massive trunk groaned like a dying animal before snapping 12 feet above the base, taken with the generations of family history. Sawdust rained down onto the freshly graded earth where a crew in matching blue polo shirts were already hammering Willow Shores Estate's signs into the torn-up soil. The smell of diesel and freshly cut would fill the air, masking the usual morning scents of lake water and wild bergamot that had greeted me every dawn for 43 years. That's when the pink golf cart came buzzing up my driveway, its candy-colored paint job glinting in the morning sun like an open wound. HOA President Tammy-Rae Sugarman sat perched behind the wheel like some suburban dictator, her strawberry blonde bob shellacked into perfect submission, oversized Chanel sunglasses reflecting my own furious face back at me in warped miniature. She didn't bother cutting the engine before thrusting a rolled document at my chest, her French-tip nails tapping impatiently against the steering wheel. "Morning, Mr. Callahan." Her voice dripped with saccharine poison, the kind of fake cheer that set my teeth on edge. "County says you've got 72 hours to remove these eyesores." She jabbed a manicured finger toward my line of private property, no trespassing signs along the shoreline, each one hand-painted with the same cattle brand symbol that marked our family's deed since 1892. I let the papers fall into the dirt between us without breaking eye contact. "Those signs stand on my land, Tammy-Rae." Her laugh sounded like a seagull choking on a bread clip. "Oh, honey, that mud puddle hasn't been yours since the commissioners approved Willow Shores last month." Behind her, 2 sheriff's deputies shifted uncomfortably in their uniforms as construction flags bloomed across my blackberry thickets like some invasive species. "The new owners need lake access." I didn't blink. "What new owners?" Her smile widened, revealing veneers too perfect for a woman who'd chain-smoked Virginia Slims since high school. "All 86 of them. Sugar. Phase 1 breaks ground tomorrow." She gestured toward the crew now staking pink survey flags through my wildflower meadow. "Though I suppose you want to harvest your weeds first." The lockbox was right where Grandpa left it, wedged behind a loose brick in the fireplace, its metal exterior pocked with shotgun pellets from that long-ago dispute with the railroad. The hinges screamed in protest as I pried it open, releasing a puff of dust that smelled of old tobacco, gunpowder, and damn paper, the signature scent of every Callahan family standoff since Reconstruction. Inside, the 1924 land grant had yellowed at the edges but remained intact, its cursive script still sharp enough to draw blood. Be it known that the parcel including the eastern floodplain, now submerged under Willow Lake, shall remain in perpetuity with the Callahan family, inclusive of all water control structures erected thereon, with all attendant rights and privileges thereof. Tammy-Rae barely glanced at the document before rolling her eyes so hard I heard her fake lashes scrape against her sunglasses. "That relic? Our permits supersede your granddaddy's doodles." She snapped her fingers at the deputies. "Serve him." The eviction notice smelled of cheap toner and bureaucratic arrogance, citing eminent domain for community benefit under County Statute 14.7. At the bottom, stamped in smudged blue ink, was the signature of County Commissioner Dickie Yates, Tammy-Rae's brother-in-law, and, according to last year's campaign finance reports, the recipient of $87,000 in consulting fees from Willow Shores Development, LLC. As their golf cart sputtered back toward the rising dust cloud of construction activity, I flipped the deed over. There, in Grandpa's faded pencil scrawl from when the Army Corps of Engineers came begging for our land in 43. Temporary flood control only. If used for other purposes without our say-so, we can tear it down. J.C. Callahan, September 1943, inched through the pines. The dam's control house glinted in the morning light, its rusted door still secured with our cattle brand lock. Tammy-Rae's luxury community was sitting on what the law still called Callahan submerged acreage, and I knew exactly how to make it resurface. The construction crews left at sundown, but I waited until the moon cast long shadows across the ravaged shoreline before slipping down to the water. My boots sank into mud that hadn't seen daylight since the dam's construction, the cold lake water soaking through my jeans as I waded toward the new dock pilings. The first flashlight beam caught the glint of something metallic beneath the structure. I reached down, fingers closing around a crumpled beer can, then another, then a cement bag, leaking gray slurry into the water. But it was the black drum bobbing near the buoy that made my stomach turn. The faded label read, ACME Construction, solvent grade above a peeling hazard symbol. I didn't need my environmental science degree to know what that meant. They weren't just building on my lake. They were poisoning it. Sarah Lipton from Lot 42 was waiting on my porch at dawn, her hand shaking around manila envelope thick enough to choke a horse. They're forging everything, she whispered, eyes darting toward the still dark McMansions across the water. Permits, soil tests, even the dam environmental impact reports. Inside were photocopied invoices from Blue Water Holdings, $18,500 for site prep, on the same day the county supposedly conducted their wetland survey. The signature at the bottom belonged to Richard Vance, Commissioner Yates' golf buddy, and, according to Sarah's scribbled note, Tammy-Rae's silent partner. Her voice dropped to a threadbare whisper. They're skimming 15% off every contract. The arsenic? That's just the start. By noon, 3 things happened in quick succession. First, my lawyer filed an injunction citing fraud, environmental crimes, and violation of the 1943 Army Corps Agreement. Second, Sheriff Dawson quietly pulled his deputies off eviction duty after seeing the doctored permits. Third, a certified letter arrived from the Army Corps themselves. Their wartime contract with Grandpa was still binding, including the clause allowing removal of temporary flood control structures at the landowner's discretion. I read the last line 3 times. No state or local approval required for enforcement of original terms. Tammy-Rae's pink golf cart came shrieking back up my driveway at sunset, this time with a trio of lawyers in tow. Too late. The dam's control house lock clicked open with a sound like a shotgun being racked. Inside, the original 1943 control panel waited under a tarp, its brass levers polished smooth by Grandpa's hands. The red one was marked floodgate release. The lawyer's shouts faded into white noise as I wrapped my fingers around it. Somewhere downstream, 86 families were sitting down to dinner in their dream homes, utterly unaware that their foundation permits were as fake as Tammy-Rae's community spirit. I could almost hear Grandpa's voice in the creak of the mechanism. Give M till morning to evacuate. The lever moved smoother than it had any right to after 80 years. Some things, like revenge, only get better with age. The dam's floodgates opened with a groan that shook the valley floor. I stood on the control house catwalk as the first surge of water exploded through the spillway, carrying 80 years of accumulated debris with it. Downstream, the lake's surface trembled like a mirage before the water began its slow, inexorable retreat. The Willow Shore Sales Office, a freshly painted monstrosity with a wraparound porch that now hung precariously over the receding shoreline, was the first to sound the alarm. At 3:17 a.m., a security guard's flashlight beam cut through the darkness as he ran along the dock, screaming into his radio about some crazy bastard draining the lake. By sunrise, the water had dropped 6 inches, revealing a ring of slime-crusted beer cans, construction pylons, and the first ominous cracks in the McMansions' decorative retaining walls. Tammy-Rae arrived in her BMW just as the news van started pulling up, her car bottoming out in the newly exposed mudflat where the boat launch used to be. She emerged wearing what I can only describe as casual tyranny. Yoga pants, a HOA Life zip-up hoodie, and enough gold jewelry to sink a lesser woman. "You psychotic redneck," she shrieked, high heels sinking into the muck with every step toward the control house. "I'll have you arrested for terrorism." I leaned against the railing, sipping coffee from Grandpa's old thermos. "Morning, Tammy-Rae." Water tables looking a little low today. Behind her, a group of pajama-clad homeowners were gathering at the water's edge, their million-dollar views rapidly becoming million-dollar mud pits. One man in monogrammed silk pajamas pointed at his dock, now resting at a 45-degree angle as the supporting pylon shifted in the unstable lake bed. What the hell is happening to our houses? The answer came at 7:43 a.m. when the first foundation failed. The sound was like a gunshot echoing across the valley as 42 Willow Shore Drive's basement wall buckled, its poured concrete cracking like stale bread. The homeowner, some Silicon Valley transplant who bragged about his waterfront coding retreat, came sprinting outside just in time to see his Tesla charging station slide into a newly formed sinkhole. That's when the screaming started. By noon, 12 homes had developed significant structural damage, their foundations exposed as the water retreated to reveal the truth. Willow Shores had been built on a slurry of construction debris and illegally dumped toxic fill. The EPA arrived just as a black drum marked ACME construction. Solvent grade had breached the surface near what was left of community dock, its corroded sides weeping a rainbow-hued slick into the remaining water. Tammy-Rae's lawyers were on their phones before the first hazmat suit appeared, but I'd already made copies of everything. The forged permits, the doctored soil tests, the handwritten note from Commissioner Yates approving alternative fill materials to cut costs. Sheriff Dawson took one look at the evidence, then at the weeping homeowners, and made the arrest so fast Tammy-Rae's diamond-studded hoop earrings went flying into the mud. Tamar-Rae Sugarman, he growled, snapping cuffs on her writhing wrists. You're under arrest for environmental crimes, fraud, and Jesus Christ. Is that arsenic? The news helicopters circle like vultures as the EPA teams move in, their yellow hazmat suits bright against the receding water. I watched in the control house as Tammy-Rae's BMW was swallowed by the mud up to its door handles, the HOA President vanity plate disappearing beneath the sludge. Downshore, Richard Vance was trying to flee in his base boat, only to run aground on the newly exposed lake bed. The look on his face when the EPA pulled the tarp off his secret, dumping ground, 3 more barrels of industrial solvent half buried near the old creek channel, was almost as satisfying as the sound of the dam's final floodgates slamming shut. By nightfall, the lake was down 8 feet and still dropping. The McMansions stood like abandoned ships in a dried-up sea, their foundations cracking under the weight of their own illegal construction. I turned off the control house lights and walked home through the chaos, past weeping homeowners and barking news reporters, past the sinking BMW and the crumbling docks. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm wailed like a dying animal. I poured myself a whiskey and sat on the porch, listening to the sounds of justice being served. Tomorrow, we'd start pulling the rest of the barrels from the lake bed. But tonight, I let Tammy-Rae's empire sink. The EPA lab results arrived at dawn in a flurry of panic and hazmat suits. I watched from my porch as their white van skidded to a stop in what was left of the Willow Shores parking lot, agents spilling out like ants from a kick mound. Their lead investigator, a no-nonsense woman with a military haircut and steel-toed boots, marched straight to the exposed lake bed where the black drums lay half buried in the muck. She didn't need to say a word. The way her gloved hands hovered over the leaking barrels told me everything. This wasn't just illegal dumping. This was a federal crime scene. By 8 a.m., the entire neighborhood had been cordoned off with yellow caution tape that fluttered in the breeze like some perverse welcome banner. The McMansion owners, now refugees in their own homes, clustered together in bathrobes and slippers, their million-dollar views replaced by an apocalyptic wasteland of cracked foundations and chemical slicks. The Silicon Valley coder from 42 Willow Shore stood barefoot in the mud, staring at the EPA's preliminary report like it was written in hieroglyphics. Arsenic levels at 1,200% of safe limits? His voice cracked. We've been swimming in this for months. The investigator didn't look up from her clipboard. Don't drink the tap water either. That's when the screaming started from Lot 18. We found Mrs. Petrovsky's replacement, a young doctor named Alvarez, kneeling in her ruined garden, sobbing over the wilted remains of what had been an award-winning rose bush collection. They told us the soil was perfect, she whispered, holding up a shriveled bloom whose petals had turned a sickly blue. They said it was premium organic fill. The EPA agent crouched beside her, using a trowel to unearth a chunk of something metallic and suspiciously shiny. Ma'am, this isn't soil. This is electroplating waste. She dropped the smoking evidence into a hazmat bag. Your roses never stood a chance. The news vans had multiplied like flies on roadkill, their satellite antennas piercing the morning sky. I was given my third interview when movement near the dam caught my eye. Commissioner Yates' silver Lexus creeping along the back service road like a thief in the night. He nearly made it to the county line before Sheriff Dawson's cruiser cut him off at the intersection, the sheriff's face grim as he pulled a suitcase stuffed with cash from the trunk. Back at the lake, The EPA had uncovered something even more damning than the toxic barrels. Buried beneath 6 feet of contaminated silt lay the original 1942 Army Corps survey maps. The ones that clearly marked this area as unsuitable for permanent structures due to the unstable karst formations beneath the lake bed. Someone had tried to burn them, but the heavy linen paper had only charred at the edges, preserving the damning evidence. Tammy-Rae, second in command, a milquetoast accountant named Reynolds who'd always looked like he was one HOA meeting away from a nervous breakdown, turned state's evidence that afternoon. He led investigators to a hidden compartment in the clubhouse ceiling containing the original, unaltered soil tests and a ledger detailing every bribe paid to fast-track the development. The final page stopped me cold. Asterisk, Project Deepwater, final transfer, $887,000 to BSBX, 1147. Vessel prep complete. Cleanup crew on standby. Asterisk. The EPA investigator's walkie-talkie crackled to life as I read those words. Ma'am, you need to see this. We followed the static to the northern shoreline where a backhoe had uncovered a steel crate stamped with radiation symbols. Its lock rusted but intact. The investigator radioed for the hazmat team as I snapped photos with shaking hands. Whatever Project Deepwater was, they'd buried it under 86 families' dream homes. As the sun set, the first lawsuits were filed. The news channels played aerial footage of the disaster on loop, their cheering, screaming eco-terrorism and HOA gone wrong in equal measure. I sat on my porch with a bourbon, watching the lights flicker on in the abandoned McMansions. Not from residents returning home, but from EPA agents conducting their contamination sweep. Somewhere in the chaos, Tammy-Rae's diamond earrings still glittered in the mud where Dawson had arrested her, and deep beneath the receding waters, something far more valuable and dangerous waited to be uncovered. The steel crate came screaming open at 3:02 a.m. under the EPA's hydraulic cutters, its rusted hinges finally giving way with sound like a dying animal. I stood shoulder to shoulder with Sheriff Dawson and the lead investigator as the halogen lights illuminated 12 corroded canisters packed in military-grade foam, each stamped with peeling black lettering. U-238 slurry, radiological waste. 24-hour services incorporated the investigator's glove hovered over the faded shipping manifest taped to the inside lid. This was supposed to be at a Nevada containment facility in 2009. She turned the brittle paper toward us. Commissioner Yates signed off on its alternative disposal. Dawson's flashlight beam shook as it traced a manifest route from an abandoned rare earth processing plant to a secure temporary holding site that turned out to be our lake bed. The dates lined up perfectly with Willow Shore's construction timeline. They hadn't just built on unstable ground. They'd turned 86 homes into a radioactive shield. The governor declared a state of emergency by sunrise. National Guard trucks rolled in as dawn painted the drain lake in sickly orange light, their crews erecting portable decontamination showers where the community garden once stood. Helicopters thundered overhead, airlifting the worst-hit families to regional hospitals for testing. I watched from my porch as men in moon suits carried the canisters to a lead-line transport truck, their movement slow and ceremonial, like pallbearers at a funeral no one had planned to attend. That's when the gunshots rang out. We found the dam control house door hanging from its hinges, the lock shot clean off. Inside, the monitoring equipment had been smashed beyond repair, but the intruder hadn't counted on Grandpa's backup system, a mechanical failsafe even the Army Corps engineers had admired. The brass control was still gleamed under my flashlight, its manual override engraving worn smooth by decades of Callahan hands. Sheriff Dawson's radio crackled as we secured the scene. Suspect vehicle spotted heading south on County Road 12. Silver Lexus with government plates. The commissioner had made his play too late. Every law enforcement agency in 3 states now had his photo. The real surprise came at noon, when a black SUV with federal plates pulled into my driveway. The man who stepped out wore a Navy windbreaker with EPA criminal investigations stitched across the back, his salt and pepper beard at odds with the sharp intelligence in his eyes. Mr. Callahan? Special Agent Marcus Boone. He nodded toward the lake. We need to talk about Project Deepwater. Over coffee at my kitchen table, Boone laid out the truth. The crate we found was just the beginning. His team had traced payments from Yates' offshore accounts to a Bahamian shell company that managed toxic waste for struggling municipalities. They were running a discount disposal service, Boone said, flipping through photos of similar crates being loaded onto a cargo ship. Take the cash, dump the waste, forge the paperwork. Rinse and repeat. The kicker? The ship's log showed it had made 3 midnight trips back to Willow Lake after its Bahamas runs. Whatever else they'd sunk beneath those McMansions, we'd only found the first piece. As Boone left, he paused at the door. Watch your back, Callahan. These people have already killed for the secret. He nodded toward the control house. And you got the only key to the rest of it. That night, I slept with Grandpa's shotgun across my lap. Somewhere out in the darkness, the lake kept whispering its secrets. The storm clouds gathered like jurors over a crime scene as the demolition crews put the final charges in place. I stood knee-deep in the receding shoreline mud, watching teams in hazmat suits move through the skeletal remains of Willow Shores. Their Geiger counters chirped like angry crickets near House 12's foundation, Tammy-Rae's prize model home, that sold for $1.2 million just 6 months ago. The governor's emergency condemnation order flapped against my hip, where I tucked it, his signature visibly shaky under the fluorescent lights of his midnight press conference. Special Agent Boone's team had followed the money trail from those Bahamas accounts like bloodhounds. $750,000 transferred in 3 neat installments to the governor's Environmental Protection Slush Fund. The dates matched exactly when the second radioactive crate went missing from Army Corps records. At precisely 7 p.m., the first demolition charge turned House 12 into a fireball that lit up the valley with unnatural daylight. The explosion sent Tammy-Rae's prize crystal chandelier, the one she bragged about importing from Venice, sailing 300 yards before embedding itself in the half-drained lakebed like some postmodern art installation. One by one, the McMansions collapsed in slow motion, their vinyl siding peeling away like cheap sunburned skin to reveal the black mold and warped support beams beneath. House 18's indoor pool imploded with a wet crunch, spewing chlorinated water across the toxic mudflats. The crowd of displaced homeowners alternated between cheers and sobs as each $900,000 investment pancaked into its own chemical-ridden foundation. I spotted old Mr. Petrovsky's replacement, Dr. Alvarez, clutching her twins as their former dream home detonated. The pediatrician's designer shoes sank into the muck as she whispered to her children in Spanish. The little boy didn't understand why his bedroom was now a smoking crater, but his sister, maybe 9 years old with braids like suspension bridges, stared at the destruction with unsettling maturity. It was making us sick anyway, she told her mother matter-of-factly, scratching at the eczema that had appeared 3 months after they moved in. Boone's dive team suited up at midnight under the eerie glow of portable floodlights. Their advanced Geiger counters started screaming before they even breached the waterline. The second crate wasn't hidden so much as casually discarded in the old creek channel, its radiation symbols half eroded by acidic water. Unlike the first discovery, this one's lid hung crookedly from one hinge, pried open years ago by someone in a hurry. The live diver feed showed the horror in 4K clarity. At least 8 broken canisters tossed carelessly near the old boat ramp, their interior scrubbed with industrial solvents but still glowing faintly on the thermal cameras. One had rolled directly beneath where the community swimming dock had stood all summer. The sheriff's call came as I was vomiting into a hazmat bucket. "You'll want to see this," Dawson growled, sounding 20 years older than he had that morning. The jailhouse interview room stank of sweat and hopelessness, the air conditioning battling a losing war against July heat. Tammy-Rae sat shriveled in her orange jumpsuit, no makeup, no jewelry, just raw pink skin where her acrylic nails had been chewed to the quick. The recording played without preamble. It was just supposed to be temporary. Her voice cracked like the McMansion foundations we'd just demolished. A fleck of spittle landed on the interrogation room mirror. Yates swore the Army Corps said the water would dilute it within 5 years. We had plans to install filtration systems after the election, but then the Silicon Valley buyers started bidding over asking price. The audio cut to Boone's calm interrogation. Who made the final decision? A silence so long I thought the recording had malfunctioned. Then, the governor's chief of staff came to the clubhouse, said we could take the tax incentives now, where they'd rezoned near his cousin's property in the valley. We drank champagne when the checks cleared. Dawn found me back at the control house. Grandpa's deed spread across the rusted control panel, like a murder victim on an autopsy table. In all the chaos, we'd missed one crucial line buried in the 1943 addendum's microscopic print. Landowner retains all mineral and subsurface rights to submerged territories, including any subsequently deposited materials. Boone actually laughed when I showed him a dry, hacking sound. You're telling me those uranium canisters technically belong to you now. I nodded toward the army of class-action lawyers descending on the courthouse. Let's just say the settlement negotiations just got radioactive. The final demolition charge detonated at high noon, collapsing the last unstable McMansion into the slurry pit it had always morally belonged in. As the dust settled, Dr. Alvarez approached through the haze, carrying something wrapped in a Whole Foods bag. She unwrapped it carefully to reveal a single surviving rose cutting from her ravaged garden, its stem scarred but still green. Without ceremony, she plunged it into the toxic mud, where her koi pond used to be. The symbolism wasn't lost on the CNN crew filming nearby. By sundown, 3 things happened in quick succession. The governor resigned during a live broadcast where his foundation makeup ran like war paint. The EPA pledged $50 million for cleanup, while quietly admitting it would take triple that. And the first Callahan corn seedlings went into the ground where Tammy-Rae's pink golf cart used to park. The lake would need decades to heal. The community generations. But as I turned off the control house lights for the last time, Grandpa's voice echoed through the valley's new silence. Some poisons can't be buried, boy. Only washed clean. The first real rain began as I walked away. Fat. Warm drops that smelled of ozone and redemption. Somewhere beneath the churning mud, the last of Willow Shore's lies dissolved, carried downstream where all bad things eventually go. Behind me, that brave little rose cutting stood straight in the downpour, its thorns glistening like promises.